Well, good afternoon. My name is Steve Flanery. I'm a director with the South Dakota Hall of Fame. And today I'm with the descendants of our newest inductee, Grace Martin Highley, who originally grew up in the Hot Springs area. And I'd like to introduce you to Cheryl Zimiga, her granddaughter, and Karen Lockhart, her granddaughter, and Toni Hansen, her great-granddaughter. Welcome, ladies. And we just want to share a conversation about your grandmother and great-grandmother. And Grace Highley was born in, Martin Highley was born in 1895 in a family homestead near Hot Springs, South Dakota. And she attended Nebraska Wesleyan University, and in 1929 she started as the first relief worker for the Fall River County Commissioners, and then became the Fall River County Welfare Director. And it led to a lifelong career of commitment to children and families that are underserved in the state of South Dakota. So I would like you guys to tell the story, and tell a story about her first clients in a cave near Edgemont, I believe it was.
Well, her very first job, she drove a Model A Ford pickup to visit a family that was living in a cave. They had 9 children, and they only had flour and milk from about 6 goats. And that was her very first experience on the job.
Wow, and that motivated her.
Yes, very much motivated.
To spend her life helping children and families.
And she was a motivated person. She was a very strong family person, so yeah.
These are great. And she went on, as starting on a county level, in 1939 she became the director of the South Dakota Child Welfare Department. And for 21 years, she built South Dakota into a nationally recognized program of child and family welfare, overcoming all kinds of financing obstacles, untrained staff, and meager funding. And as you just said, Cheryl, it motivated her to continue to build this program, and one of the strongest programs in the country. And a model, her program became a model for other states, correct?
It did,
Yeah.
it did.
It's just awesome. And I can't imagine what it was like during the Depression, coming out of the Depression, the dirty 30s. You talk about poverty, and you talk about people
needing
goats and flour. It's just a great story. So she took over this office. She started from scratch. She implemented strategies and policies and standards so that all children would be served that needed it, correct?
And she believed in supervision. She believed that you needed goals and you needed policies. And it was kind of interesting because we visited with Harriet Stock a little bit, who started to work with her late in the years. And she was given a manual that she said was 4 inches thick, filled with guidelines.
That your grandmother wrote.
And her staff, of course, too, you know, but it was under her leadership. And she said she and another gal took a class for getting more credits. And in that class, they would turn to each other and go, well, that's already in the manual. That's already in the manual.
She had it covered.
So she really did implement those policies and goals.
And she passed away in the 80s, correct? And so she spent her whole life doing this, didn't she?
She did, right up until the last minute.
One of the things that I saw is, in doing my research on this, is there, and I assume that one of you wrote this, but she had a phrase about keeping her eye on the child. Would you talk about that a little bit? I think that kind of says it all.
Yeah, I think she is the one that wrote that. That came from her, to keep the eye on the child. That, and to always listen. It's in some of her documents that the best thing you can do is to listen to the child. It isn't necessarily what the adults are saying, but to watch and see what the child is doing and what they're saying, to find out where they're coming from and what their need truly is.
So you have this grandmother and great-grandmother. I'd like to hear each one of your own experiences. What are some of the memories you have of being the granddaughter of Grace?
I'd like to share that she was so busy doing so much. And in the beginning, she went to Pier during the week. and then she would return to Hot Springs on the weekend, where our grandfather and her youngest son, our father, she wanted him to be able to finish high school in Hot Springs. And I remember, honestly, I think it was Dad that told me the story, that he had come home on the weekend much later than he should have, sneaking into the house, and decided he would sleep on the couch so that they wouldn't hear him. And when he awoke the next morning, his suitcase was next to him on the couch. And he was off to Pier, and he was going to finish in Pier, and that was that.
So when she made her mind up, look out, right?
Yeah, if you have to do something, do it right.
Yep.
And was that her, was it dogged determination was
Right,
in
but-
advocating for children? And
Right. I mean, she was so busy dealing with other children, other things. She still had time for her family
Right.
and to stay on top of things in her family. And like Dad said, there was no argument. The suitcase was there, and he finished high school in Pier.
Pierre, that's
I
funny.
think he played football too, didn't he?
Oh, he
In
did. He
Pier.
excelled in Pier in
Pier,
athletics.
right.
So yeah.
Is your father still with us?
No, he's
Okay.
passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Karen? What
Well, I
stands
would
out for you?
probably a takeoff from what Cheryl just shared, that it amazes me, especially now looking back. The more I learn about my grandmother, because I somewhat took her for granted in a way. I just loved her, and she was always there to love me and love my children. But when I look back on her now and see all these things that she has done, and as Cheryl said, she still had time, took the time to keep our family together. I mean, some of my great memories are, I mean, the kids were really little, but even before you kids were born, we would all go to Grandma's house, and we would have these huge dinners. She'd bring the cousins. She would make sure that the rest of her children and all of their children would come. Our summers were filled with the excitement and expectation of our cousins coming. And then when I had my own children, then I would take them to great-grandma's house. And one of my fun memories is she pulled out a wheelbarrow, an old-fashioned wheelbarrow that kind of scoops down like this, and put the kids in it, and showed me push the kids up and down the sidewalk. Just things like that that she would do. And in the midst of everything, she'd come over to where I lived and pick the kids up. One of my great pictures is of Toni. She's about 4, and she's got her little suitcase and her Raggedy Ann doll.
Heading off for the weekend
She's
with Grandma?
heading off to get into the car with Grandma. But then as I got older, she stayed in touch all the time and would give me good advice on being a mother and having a career. But she would write letters, which oftentimes we don't do anymore, and I have letters from her.
Why don't you share it? You brought
Well,
one.
All right. So I just thought it would be fun to read this letter. When I was looking through things, this is one I stumbled upon, and it actually was sent July 24th, 1972. The
Right
year
after the flood.
The flood, yep. And I'm not going to read it all, but it starts with dearest, which is one of the things that grandmother always used, dearest. And I assuming she used it on other people, but I know she did our family. Dearest Karen, and this morning's mail brought your beautiful birthday card with its lovely letter and message. Guess I'm getting to be an old softie, for I cried. I was so pleased and happy. Then she said, I intended to be over sooner, but have had company. A gal from Cleveland, Ohio was here 3 days. She left yesterday afternoon. Then a foster girl from Rapid City ran away and came here. This would be in Edgemont. And I have had her until this morning. She had been in a foster home for 3 years. The family were in the flood. The foster father was killed. 6 of the foster children drowned. This girl, 16, and the foster mother survived. She was on a pile of debris, was rescued at daylight. She came here to visit her father, but it didn't work out because of the stepmother, and she ran and came to me. To me, that's the powerful statement, and came to me.
Came to me.
Her social worker from Rapid City came for her this afternoon. The foster mother is in Tennessee with her own daughter. The house was entirely gone. And again, she came to me. That was my grandma.
Here's a young woman whose life is totally turned upside down, totally devastated, and she comes to your grandmother.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yep. So,
Toni, how about you? Are there any memories you'd like to share with us about
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Of course. So, of course, I was a lot younger, but I knew her. Some of my first memories when she lived in Edgemont, and how when we'd go to her house and play in the backyard and swing on the weeping willow, and of course you get tired and you go inside for a drink, and instead of just here you go, she would get her metal glasses out, the colorful metal glasses,
Yes.
but she would sit down with me when I had my drink, and we would talk while and I didn't think of it then, but at the time I realized that's how she was bonding with me and spending time with me, and noticing me. I guess I felt seen by her, because we would talk and I'd have my drink and often maybe some little cookies or something, and then I'd be ready to go off and play again. But I felt seen by her and cared by her. And then if I ever needed anything at her house, like I remember one time needing a pencil for homework. She didn't give me one pencil, she gave me a whole stack of them rubber band together, because I needed all those pencils.
And she collected them all the time.
Yeah. And one time I needed an aspirin, and it wasn't, okay, here's your aspirin with the drink of water. It was, and then here's the whole bottle in case you need some more. I mean, those are just some examples. So the generosity. There was also an attic that had been redone, and all of us grandchildren would be up there playing, and we'd all sleep together, and all the cousins would get to be together, and we'd be called down for pancakes, and it was just always such a happy house. Even when we do little kid things, like she had this wax rose, I don't know if it was a sculpture or a candle, but it was soft, and I loved to pick off of it like Play-Doh, and I've never once got scolded. And I think now when I try to make my house look nice, I'm surprised she didn't scold me for that. But I would, and then the candy jar was always full, and so we would get candy out of the candy jar when we wanted.
Yeah. And we went for ice cream.
Oh, and the ice cream shop. Oh, yeah. So, of course, we could have ice cream. And my favorite was the sticks, the candy sticks, swirl sticks. And we would go there and pick whichever colors we wanted. And she always had these tins of raspberry candies, too.
That's right. I had forgotten about those.
Yeah. So, I just...
So kind of a typical grandma
Very much.
where you get ice cream and all the treats.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't do that for the two of you often, probably, but... So she kept mentoring others well into her 80s, and in 1978 she received an honorary doctorate from Augustana. Do you remember that?
She actually was somewhat nervous about it, reluctant. She was humble. She didn't want recognition. But I think deep down she was very pleased.
But she never graduated from a college either,
No,
right?
no, she didn't.
She did all these things without a college degree.
But she did go to college for
She
chemistry.
did, right?
chemistry.
Yeah, but I
You
mean,
mentioned
but she
that.
never graduated from college,
No.
so
Right,
she
right.
she did this as she went along. I mean,
Right.
she wrote the book.
She wrote the book. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed that in many of her credits is that she received the Hubert H. Humphrey
Yes, she did.
Award for Humanitarian Service. And I'm from Huron, South Dakota. Hubert Humphrey was born in Dolan, South Dakota, raised, and his brother had a drugstore in Huron, and Hubert Humphrey was always in Huron.
Oh, okay.
So Hubert Humphrey is just one of the greatest public servants we've ever had, and that is really says a lot, And he really cared for people, So.
Right.
And then here's the other one that I thought was really cool, you guys, is that Grace was known as the champion of children. At one point in her retirement, because of no available space at the school in Edgemont, she opened her home as a classroom for exceptional children. I mean, who does that kind of thing, right?
She does.
Grace Martin.
She does.
And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting is here she's being inducted in the South Dakota Hall of Fame with probably the most famous person we're inducting this year is our former governor, Dennis Dugard. And Dennis, his lifelong profession before he became a governor was the executive director of the Children's Home Society of South Dakota. And your mother was a board member of the Children's Home,
Right.
Grandmother, yes.
or grandmother,
Yes.
excuse
Yep.
me.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that kind of says it all. And I'm going to mention that to Governor Dugard tonight, that she was, he may or may not know that, but that just really speaks highly. So Grace, we said she died in 1985, and before we came in here, Toni was just telling me about a new venture in her life that she's starting that really exemplifies and honors her great-grandmother's life. Tell us what you're up to, Toni, in your new
Sure. Well,
venture.
we've decided, and we live in Austin, Texas currently, and so we're starting there with opening some mental health practices. And it's my hope to have a picture of her in the offices, and just thinking on what she did in a way to continue on helping, and just really a desire to help. We're a little further along in our career life, so this really is an opportunity to try and give back and maybe help honor her and
Awesome.
her desire to give back.
And coming off the pandemic, when we're just so short of good mental health services all over our society, that's just really awesome.
Sure.
And, well, I want to thank you, ladies. And to me, the South Dakota Hall of Fame, Grace Martin Highley exemplifies the type of person that we as board of directors elect to get into the Hall of Fame. And she's been gone since '85, and we always try to induct someone posthumously. And I think we really hit a home run. I know we did. And you ladies really gave a great portrait of your grandmother and great-grandmother, and I want to thank you for being here today.
And I think we're thrilled that her legacy will live on in the Hall of Fame.
And
too.
that's
Yes,
and
very much
that's
so.
what's going to be cool is your grandchildren will be able to go
Right.
on a website someday and
Right.
say that was my great-great-grandmother.
Yep.
Yeah,
True.
which is going to be really cool.
Thank you.
Very
All right.
good.
Well, thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.